Yes. Except it's not muddy, it's just hot flash. All right, now, got to talk about St. Paul and his letter to the Ephesians. Part of what he's trying to do with his letter to the congregation in Ephesus is to help them to understand, as we are helped to understand, that God, as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, are totally relational. There's no part of God that is not in relationship with himself and with us at all times and in all places. It's all relational all the time. There's a wonderful Russian icon by the name of a guy by the name of Rublev called the Icon of the Trinity, which shows three figures, three divine messengers who are visiting the Old Testament patriarch Abraham. And they're sitting at a table with a chalice on the table, which designates an iconic in icon talk, the overflowing love which God has for his world, his creation. But they only sit, the Trinity does, on three sides of the table, and the figures are pointing to an open side of the table as an invitation to the observer, the person looking at the icon, and inviting them to sit and take part in the overflowing love of God in the Trinity at the table. And it pictures God's great desire to draw us into his life and to share that divine life with him. Now, if it's all relationship all the time, that should tell you something about the nature of your life. We are all in relationships all of the time, and they are complex, depending on whether you're dealing with acquaintances, with friends, with family, with workmates. Relationships can be very complex, and they can be in a constant state of change. I got an email from somebody this week. I had an appointment with him, and the email, or the text rather, since I am now the texting king apparently, thank you very much, said this: "I'm running late because of a mental emergency. Should be in shortly after lunch." And of course, I'm doing my normal Harding freak out. Oh my God, what could possibly be wrong? She's having a mental breakdown, you know, there's something going on in the family. Well, a half hour later, I get another text saying, "Sorry, it was a dental emergency." Mental. Well, you see how one little letter can change your relationship because of the nature of how you're thinking about it. And that is just the way it is all of the time with all of us. Relationships are difficult, they are complex, and because of that, we are constantly in a state of trying to pull our lives together and try to let people who know who we are. And one of the ways that we know who we are is that we have to try to communicate something of the nature of who we are. You know, I don't know about you, but I know for myself that I'm always in a state of change. And just for your information, all of you are too, because we're all in relationship and we know this about each other, that things change, circumstances change. The one thing which is always true, however, is that we are trying somehow to, as we understand ourselves, we're always trying to get the other to understand us, who we are, what we're doing. And at the same time, we always want to do it so that we present the best picture of ourselves as people of God. Right? We don't try to present the worst of ourselves. We try to present the best of ourselves at all times and in all places. One psychiatrist has told me over and over and over again over the years that we are as healthy as we possibly can be at this given moment. And beyond that, complexity and change is the name of the game. So that means that there's a lot of knocking around in all of our relationships. Not at all unusual to know that your relationship is in a state of change when you're having a sense of the goodness and the joy and the pleasure of life beginning to change and beginning to fly away. If you're into an argument, into a disagreement, into trying to plan something that's just going down the tubes, all of a sudden, anger begins to emerge, confusion emerges, pointing the finger comes out, and then all of a sudden, the joy and the pleasure and compassion, which is yours through the graciousness of God, begins to disappear. In other words, you have been plundered by sin and by evil, and you know it because goodness is going away. Keep that in mind next time that you have a broken or a frazzled relationship, and you'll know that badness, sin, or evil has arrived because the goodness, the joy, the pleasure, the graciousness of life which had been present before is going away. And that then is the way in which the Spirit of God breaks into your head to let you know and alert you to that fact. And it's time to begin to redo and to reshape. John of Kronstadt, a Russian monk, can't get by on a Sunday without a monk, from the 19th century, he said this about us: never confuse the person formed in the image of God, that would be all of us, with the evil within him, because evil as breakage is a chance occurrence, an illness, a misfortune, a devilish reverie. Right? We all of us know people who, when they have a few too many beers, start running off at the mouth. Right? Say stuff that otherwise, they would never have said. The devilish reverie. But the very essence, he goes on to say, of the person is the image of God, and this remains in him despite every disfigurement. And that is where Paul is going with this letter in this section from Ephesians, that you're looking always for the image of God, drawing it out, not only of yourself, but also of the other person. And sin is always going to be the power to break things, always, and to break down and dissolve either our own centers of our lives or the relationships that we have. We've all been in places in our lives where our centers have dissolved to some degree. Have you ever said, I don't know what I'm doing, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what the heck is going on? That's dissolving. And it is then where you need the risen Christ to begin to work in you. Now, this evil, this badness, this dissolution must be resisted. And that's why St. Paul begins in this portion of the letter to say this: I pray that God grant you a strengthening in your inner being. And the word inner being is psyche, right, as in psychology. Which is to say that at the point where you recognize that your life is in flux and in change and in brokenness, and that goodness is not present in the fashion that you formerly had enjoyed it and appreciated it, that the Holy Spirit will dig into your brain and be present there. Now, that's not the only thing that happens. In verse 17, with power through the Spirit and Christ in the heart, that is where you will begin to be moved, to be transformed, to be converted. And to say that Christ is in your heart is not the ooh-ah, ooh-ah, feel-good kind of thing in your heart. In the Bible, the heart is the seat of reason, right? In America, the brain is the seat of reason. Okay, in the Bible, the heart is the seat of reason. And so when Christ digs into your heart, it is because he is going to bring you to a reason, a recognition of where you really are in your life, so that you can admit to yourself that goodness is absent and flying away, and then the Holy Spirit working in your brain will begin to help you to sort through the complexities of those relationships and circumstances of your life so that you can put a piece of the package and the puzzle together in a way that makes sense, so that goodness and love and compassion and mercy and joy and graciousness can be restored. Those are some of the gifts of the Spirit, as you know. And that is how you will know that Christ is present in your life. The other way you're going to know, Paul talks about faith and trust in many places. A lot of times when relationships go bad, faith breaks down or gets lessened, diminished, and therefore trust gets diminished. And it is at that point that then, as you have faith once again, and trust once again, both in God and other people with whom you're relating to, that is how you know that Christ has pierced your heart and the Spirit has infiltrated and is working on your mind. So faith and trust are key components to that in the restoration of the goodness in your life. Now, Paul says all well and good, but God is Trinity, and we then have Creator. I don't know, when was it the last time that you actually stopped, and I mean literally stopped, and felt the ground underneath your feet? I mean actually felt the ground under your feet. You are soil from the earth. We all are. And it is the other means by which God lets you know that He is participating in your life, the recognition that you are soil and that you're part of the creation on which you walk. And these are the ways that Paul talks about the restoration of beauty and goodness in your life. Christ in your heart, not for your own self-interest and self-aggrandizement, but for the sake of your restoring of goodness, not only in your own life, but in the lives of the people around you. Thinking it through by means of the gift of the Holy Spirit as to how best to do that. And being always recognizing that you are part of the earth and not its center. I know last night, my wife and my son, they just had to play. It's all about me all the time. And they got this bird that has a motion sensor on it, and they hit it. And every time I walked by that bird, it birded. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Tweet, tweet, tweet. And I couldn't find the bird. And they didn't bother to tell me. So, of course, it's all about me, so I was getting a little cranky. So I was deciding whether to get a baseball bat or a net. Oh, not to hit my wife, okay? God bless you all. We don't want to have that kind of broken relationship. But just to find the blessed bird. Just in case it was real. Well, eventually I found the bird. And it was very good, and the bird still chirps, and we've moved it to a new location to irritate whoever else in the family decides to go over there and not tell them about it. But you see, in the relationship, you see the option of choices that I had, right? Right? I could have gotten downright ornery. I could have paid no mind to it at all. I could have cussed somebody out for buying that stupid thing and wasting the money on it. Or I could have laughed. You see the range of the options. And you see why Paul so critically says that the gift of the Holy Spirit meets you in your mind so that you can think through things. And Christ pierces your heart so that you are placed in a place of love and enjoyment and pleasure and grace. And by that means you then continue to build and strengthen the relationships which are present. And so goodness is active and surrounding you. And that is how Paul says that Christ and God as Father, Son, and Holy Spirit work in our lives. And no, growth is never without pain and anguish, and you know that as well as I do. And it's always subject to change our lives all of the time. And it is that by which Paul makes certain that we recognize that the love of Christ surpasses knowledge. Knowledge, your book learning, your practical wisdom, all the stuff you've learned about life, all are used by the Holy Spirit in service of the love of Christ. Which is to say that you take all of the resources which have been given you by education and by experience and use